All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, let's talk about the Terence Crawford-Shawn Porter fight and what Terence Crawford had to say in reaction to Shawn Porter saying he was going to knock him out. Let's do that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So we got this really big fight coming up on November 20th between Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. Terence Crawford is the WBO champion, the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of other people. Shawn Porter is a perennial contender at welterweight. He's a multi-time champion. He was a former WBC champion, the former IBF welterweight champion, a guy that put in a really great fight against the current IBF and WBC champion, Errol Spence Jr., just all around one of the top guys for the last decade in the welterweight division. And this is a fight for Terence Crawford that I think is fair to say is despite all that he's done in his career, is a step-up fight for Terence Crawford in the eyes of a lot of people. Even Terence Crawford himself says that on paper, this would be his toughest fight on paper. And it is a fight that really is going to give him an opportunity to prove what he is at welterweight. And honestly, man, I think listening to the way that he's talking about the fight, I'm appreciating what he's saying. He's not just brushing off what a lot of people are saying and what a lot of people have been saying pretty much since he's moved to welterweight, which is that he needs to fight somebody. And he also says that he's taking the fight serious and all that good stuff. But when Shawn Porter comes out and says that he's going to knock him out, Terence Crawford gives it a good giggle and says, man, the dude is not knocked out. I don't remember the last time he's knocked out anybody. So I don't think there's a lot of risk to me getting knocked out by Shawn Porter. Not that he's underestimating Shawn Porter or discounting Shawn Porter and his abilities in the ring, but just saying, man, that he ain't really worried about getting knocked out by Shawn Porter. And I will tell you, man, that is something that is pretty much something that I can agree on, and something that is, that is a safe bet. Shawn Porter, like he said, has not had a knockout in a long time. I do believe the last high-level fighter that he fought that he knocked out was Andre Berto, if I recall correctly. I think there's like maybe one other TKO since that. I think maybe the guy, I don't think his name was Eric Boone, but I can't recall the name. But there's another TKO that happened before the Andre Berto fight. But the last real top-notch fighter that he got in that Shawn Porter was able to knock out was Andre Berto. He went the distance with Errol Spence Jr., went the distance with Keith Thurman, went the distance with Danny Garcia, went the distance with Kell Brook. He did stop Paulie Malignaggi though, but Paulie Malignaggi was coming up from a different weight class, and he's not the same level of fighter that we're talking about when we're talking about Terence Crawford. So when Terence Crawford laughs at the idea that that Shawn Porter is going to knock him out, I think that is something that is, I kind of agree with him on, man. I don't see a knockout happening for Shawn Porter. On the flip side, though, it is a very real thing that, Terence Crawford also has not beaten anybody like a Shawn Porter ever, right? So on one side, yeah, you can say that Shawn Porter hasn't had a knockout in a long time and definitely has never knocked out anybody the level of Terence Crawford. But you can also say that Shawn Porter has fought people, though, that have been at the level of Terence Crawford or close to the level of Terence Crawford, and he's always given those dudes good fights. He hasn't won the fights. It's the people that I think could be somewhere close to Terence Crawford are obviously the Keith Thurman fight and the Keith Thurman fight and the Errol Spence Jr. fight. But in both of those fights, he was in the fight. He was no walk in the park, and I think that definitely has, can bring something to bear on Terence Crawford, who is used to guys getting bowled over in the ring, right? So I don't know, where the advantage goes in that as far as the past experience, right? Is it, Shawn Porter, who has been close but no cigar against very, very good level, he's proven that he was on par with every fighter that he's ever fought. He may not have pulled out the win, but he belonged in the ring, and he gave those guys some of the best fights that they've had in their career. He's never been blown out, no matter what the level of fighter that he's been in, right? Although he never got the knockout. Or the guy that is knocked out, an 8-fight knockout streak like Terence Crawford is. He's knocked everybody out since Victor Postol. But he has never been in the ring with somebody that I think was anywhere close to giving him to being on par with him as a fighter and being able to compete with him as a fighter. Now, some people will say that he's still not in that situation with Shawn Porter, that, you know, that Terence Crawford's got all the weapons in the world and Shawn Porter is a more limited fighter. But the fact of the matter is, though, that Shawn Porter has been at this level and Terence Crawford has not been at this level. Now, again, that's not me saying that I think Terence Crawford is going to be lost at this level. There are chances, you know, there is a significant chance, and that's the one that if I was betting money, I would be putting my money on, that Terence Crawford is of that skill level, is of that skill set, and can beat fighters that are that good. He just has not had the opportunity to do so. He's fought some fighters that are like a little bit underneath that level, right? Guys like Victor Postol is a good fighter. He's not a world beater. You know, Jeff Horn is not a world beater. Kell Brook was fighting at that level at a point in time, and he dismantled Kell Brook. You know, but I think it's safe to say that Kell Brook was a bit of a shell of himself. However, and that there was some, you know, a little bit of a good fight to be at the beginning of that fight, but you know, just because you have not beaten guys in their prime who are at that level does not mean that when you step up, you're not going to be able to have your way with those guys, especially if you were just an extra level talent. There's plenty of examples of people moving up in class and dominating when they move up in class. For example, when Errol Spence Jr. first fought Kell Brook, that was a lot of the talk going on about that fight, was that Errol Spence Jr. had never been on the fight, been on the level of Kell Brook. Kell Brook had fought Gennady Golovkin and shown what he was worth up there at middleweight. He had never lost at 147. He had beaten Shawn Porter. And, this was going to be Errol Spence Jr.'s first time at that level. Well, when Errol Spence got to that level, he basically leveled Kell Brook. He didn't run completely through him in the beginning, but, over time, the class showed for Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. wore out and stopped Kell Brook. And, this very well could be the same thing where Terence Crawford has never fought a guy on the level of Shawn Porter, but that does not necessarily mean that Shawn Porter is on his level. So, I really like the fight, man. And I'm telling you, it's similar to what I've said with like the upcoming fight with Jaron Ennis, where Jaron Ennis is an up-and-coming 147-pounder, and he's looking to get into the position to be a mandatory challenger, and he's fighting a guy who in Thomas Delorme, that I think is a solid fighter, and if he can knock him out and really show that he's a level above Thomas Delorme, that would be enough for me to say, okay, yeah, throw him in there with the big guys, right? With Shawn Porter, if Terence Crawford goes in there and dismantles Shawn Porter, and Shawn Porter is nothing different than Jeff Horn was, and nothing different than Jose Benavidez was, or guys like Yuriorkis Gamboa was, if he's able to do that, then I think he secures himself as a number one pound for pound fighter in the world, and then I might even start saying he may be the best welterweight. Right now, for me, the best welterweight is Errol Spence Jr. and until proven otherwise. But really, depending on what he does with Shawn Porter, if it's an easy fight for him and Errol Spence Jr. had a more difficult fight with Shawn Porter, then, you may be able to make the argument that maybe Terence Crawford is, he's there with Errol Spence Jr. or above Errol Spence Jr. Really, nothing is going to settle that issue till they actually get in the ring. But as far as what, Shawn Porter said about knocking out Terence Crawford, I'm 100% with Terence Crawford. I don't see that happening. However, do not lunch that Shawn Porter can make this fight very, very difficult for Terence Crawford and really test Terence Crawford's heart. And if he can really test Terence Crawford's heart, make it a very gritty fight, grimy fight where, I'm not going to say skills are out of the window, but, it becomes more of a really rough it out, I'm going at you, you going at me type of fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Shawn Porter could get that type of fight. That's the type of fight that he wants. That's the type of fight that he needs. A technical boxing match, I wouldn't think would work for Shawn Porter. So, but anyway, we'll see what happens in the fight, man. I'm just really, really happy that the fight's going to happen. I'm really happy that we can get After this fight, however it goes, we'll know where Terence Crawford is, and nobody is going to be able to say anything about the fact that he hasn't fought any welterweights. And then we can push for the other big fights in the welterweight division. But anyway, that's my take on the situation. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.